We like the matchup. I like where we're at defensively.
I especially need to make those big plays.
I play defensive.
Play with confidence, play with swagger.
We're going to have to play our best ball.
Word of the day is confidence. And where does BYU lie on that confidence spectrum as a football team going into TCU? Blaine, straight up, are you confident that BYU can rally, unlike last year, and not have back-to-back losses and truly bounce back and leave the Texas Tech game as an outlier and win this game against TCU on Saturday?
In one word, and we're going to do more than one word, but the answer is yes. I'm very confident that they can bounce back. And there are several reasons for that. First of all, let's talk about the offense a little bit and the struggles that they had against Texas Tech. In my mind, first of all, Texas Tech, let's give them credit. That's a very good defense. The top rush defense in the country. In defensive efficiency, they're off the charts, really, really good. But there are a lot of self-inflicted things that happen offensively. And I feel like Bear Bachmeier is going to come back and have a big game because that was an aberration game against a great defense. So BYU compounded the fact that Texas Tech is really good defensively. And if you take a look at in the season balance what Bear has done compared to what he did against Texas Tech, passing yards, he's been averaging 211 yards, 188 against Texas Tech. Quarterback rating 148 down to 105. Rushing yards, 49.5, and he's had even bigger games than that, just 12 yards rushing, and that's a telling tale, Spencer.
They made it a clear point, did Texas Tech's defense, to take away the Bear Bachmeier run game. They were not going to let him do what he usually does. Then you got to find other ways to beat them, and you're talking about self-inflicted wounds. Drop passes, muff punts. We'll get to the special teams situation in just a moment, but it just felt like BYU's offense was stuck in the mud because they couldn't make the single big play to try and create some momentum.
Yes, that's what you've got to make some big plays in a big game. Now, when you have the record that BYU has, every game is a big game. Now, this TCU game is monstrous because you still are in control of your own destiny. This team knows that. And so they have got to go out and on offense, not only do they need to establish the line of scrimmage and play smarter, because as I went back and watched the film, it wasn't that Texas Tech was pushing BYU around. It was that BYU, it seemed like on every play, one or two players missed the blocking assignment. So somebody comes free, or they're supposed to go double team, they were hesitant, so a guy plugs it up and the running back has to bounce, or Bear has to bounce. I feel like they're going to knuckle down, they're going to learn from this, and they will be assignment sound. And when they're assignment sound, they can actually run the football decently against the Texas Tech team. They couldn't run it at all, it felt like, in that game.
They had 63 rush yards at halftime. They popped off a little bit in the first quarter, which I thought, okay, maybe BYU can establish the run, but then Texas Tech makes some adjustments. And to your point, it felt like BYU from largely the second quarter on could not do anything in the run game.
I think they will fix that. They will be more assignment sound on offense. They've got to play with some confidence and a little bit of swagger. And this matchup is an interesting one. I think they'll be able to run the ball, but you know what TCU does best? Defensively, they defend the run. You know what they don't do well at all? They're one of the worst teams in the country. Anytime a team is 100+ in a ranking, you have to think, okay, maybe we should attack that. And they don't defend the pass very well, which is an interesting thing. They throw the ball really well, but they don't defend the pass. That's odd. Usually really good throwing teams get a lot of work in practice defending the throw, but they don't. So I think BYU may throw it a little earlier in this game. They threw the ball 38 times in the last game, but I think earlier in the game plan, they'll get the ball out. I do think they'll be able to run the football against TCU. They're going to clean it up on offense, and that's going to make a difference.
BYU, I would be hard-pressed to believe, will have the notable drops that their talented core of receivers had against Texas Tech, and it wasn't like there were a lot. But JoJo had one that would have been a first down in a critical situation to try, again, just try and create something positive. Get a first down, move the sticks, get BYU onto the other side of the field. They had one trip into the red zone the entire game, and it happened, what, midway through the fourth quarter?
Yeah.
Like, it just was stuck in the mud. So I believe that the receivers specifically will bounce back. And maybe you're right. Maybe BYU passes to set up the run.
Which is not what they've done all season long, but this team's strength dictates that, right? I think Bear will get back in form. I think he'll be effective in the run game, especially if you throw the ball and get some success throwing it, and they feel like, wow, we got to get back on our pass drops. We got to defend here. We got to really focus on this. Then you run the ball as a change-up, and I think you have a great opportunity.
You look at these stats, running the football as a team. The BYU, I said 67 or 63 yards in the first half. BYU ran for 4 yards in the second half against Texas Tech. And I know they
were behind, right?
In there. And
yeah.
Sure, you're trying to break things open and probably relying on the pass a little bit more, but didn't have a rushing score. BYU 2.5 yards per rush. I believe, like you do, Blaine, that this running game will have opportunities against TCU. Even though TCU's rush defense is good, playing on your home field, being able to rally, being back in LaVell Edwards Stadium for the first time in almost a month. The last time BYU played a home game was against Utah. Think about that.
Yeah.
When was the last time BYU played a home game? It is so valuable for BYU to come home, feel the energy of the stadium. You block a little harder. You're more assignment sound. You're that much more excited, and you go out and you make some plays.
And that guy we were just watching, number 4, LJ Martin.
He'll be better, too.
He's going to be a week healthier.
Yes.
He's a little tentative to start, but I think he's healthy this week. Let's talk about this defense, because the defense, in the grand scheme of things against Texas Tech, played extremely well, considering that they had to defend so many short fields with turnovers and special teams. We're going to talk about that in just a second. But you could give them a positive. Like, I think the defense was very much a positive against Texas Tech. But there were a couple of plays in this game that were game-changing plays. And BYU's defense all season long, when they've got behind, it seems like it's the defense that all of a sudden gets a pick six, forces a fumble, gets a critical pick, and gives the offense a short field that turns the trajectory of the game around. And in this game, just a couple of little opportunities to make plays. We're looking at one right there. Evan Johnson in perfect position to make a play, and the receiver comes back and makes a play, and then Evan Johnson runs into Folitau, and now the receiver goes all the way down into scoring position, and they score. A couple of big runs where guys were just slight assignment errors. Another opportunity for a pick later. And Texas Tech made some great plays. Their touchdown throw on Trey Alexander
was gorgeous.
Was a beautiful throw and catch. But I look back at that, and I'm like, just tiny little things. Like Trey reached, he was facing toward the receiver and reached with his right hand, which is his short hand. And if he keeps his right hand down and reaches with his left hand across, he's 6 to 7 inches longer. The ball went over his fingertips by a couple of inches right here. So tiny little things make a difference. And I know they're focused on those things this week. I thought the defense played extremely well. I think they have it in them to play better, because what they're going to do is they're going to force turnovers against this TCU team.
Yeah, fair to give the defense overall against Texas Tech maybe a B or a B+ grade. And they'll point to the fact they didn't force any big plays, no takeaways.
Right.
And those are the momentum shifters, especially on the road. We're talking about, can BYU bounce back against TCU? Well, Blaine, straight up, do you feel like this defense will create turnovers, something they didn't do against Texas Tech, and bounce back to help BYU win this game, specifically in that category? Like, do you feel like BYU will create more chaos and havoc and create some turnovers?
Yeah, and style helps too. Texas Tech is so balanced. Like, they're literally 50% run, 50% pass. TCU threw the ball 50 times in last week's game. So the ball's going to be in the air. When the ball's in the air, there's opportunities to make plays. You can put pressure on the quarterback. You can make Josh Hoover throw the ball in bad spots. This defense is excited to play against a team that's going to throw the ball like this. I think they create multiple turnovers, 2+, and I think BYU wins the turnover margin battle. And if they do, they win this game. Hey, as bad as that game looked, if they're positive in turnover margin instead of -3 against Texas Tech, they have a chance to win that game.
You want to talk about probably the biggest area that BYU needs to bounce back in? It's on special teams. And let's consider one of the worst average starting field position discrepancies I've ever seen in a BYU game. There was 19 yards of differential between BYU and Texas Tech, specifically BYU's average starting field position against Tech, their own 23-yard line. Okay, fine, whatever, own 23. But what about Texas Tech? They averaged, Blaine, starting on their own 42-yard line. How do you beat that team, who was ranked number 6 in the country, on their field when they have everything to play for? In desperation, they already had a conference loss. This was a must-win for Texas Tech. How are you going to beat that team when you are giving up, on average, 19 yards of field position for the entire game? This is an area where BYU can and should, and on their home field, will bounce back. BYU had 2 muffed punts. 2 bad punts. You had 1 muffed punt by Parker Kingston. I'm going to give Will Ferrin a pass on the 51-yard field goal because that
wind was blowing.
Swirling.
You were there.
It was
yeah.
it was a weird situation and timing of the game. But still, it's like he probably makes that most of the time. You just could not get anything going. Then Cody Hagan has kind of a weird scenario where the ball bounces in front of him and he decides to take it late and in his end zone, and he was lucky to get out as far as he did, Blaine. It all hurt BYU's average starting field position. And when you are in a game like that, you can't do it. Can BYU rally with Kelly Papinga, who I'm sure has been in his guys' ears all week, and win the field position battle against TCU?
The reason I say a resounding yes is because what we were talking about, the offense was a bit of an aberration. The special teams was a huge aberration.
And they've been so strong.
They have been unbelievably good. They've made good decisions. They flipped field position in BYU's favor all season long. Cover teams have been good. Punting's been good. Will's been nails, right? They've made good decisions. I just think that's a one-game thing. And maybe the moment was too big for special teams. The wind compounded things. They come home, and I feel like special teams is going to be on point, and they're really working on that in this game. I think they will bounce back with a big special teams game that will contribute to positive field position. You can't give anybody that kind. Think about it. Texas Tech worked with nothing but short fields, and BYU worked with nothing but long fields in that game. In a game against a good football team, which, by the way, TCU is a very talented football team after watching them on film, you can't do that. I believe they won't do that. I believe at home, at night, with what they've just learned, they'll be better off.
That all plays into the mentality of where BYU has been in their wheelhouse in that time slot late Saturday night where the Vampire Cougs have feasted. And that plays into general mentality, which might be the most underrated aspect of this all. We've talked a few times this week about BYU having the opportunity to not, after losing the first game of the season, go on the road and take on a ranked team like they did last year when you had to face Arizona State after losing to Kansas. Now BYU, after the setback and the hard lesson against Texas Tech, does get to come back to Provo, first home game in 4 weeks, with that crowd and knowing everything is on the line. BYU is still in the driver's seat, Blaine. There is so much power in that. They know that if they win, beginning with TCU, and can find a way to win the final three, there's nothing that any other team in the Big 12 can do to prevent them from getting to Arlington. They are in the driver's seat. There is great power in that. On the flip side, TCU, had they beaten Iowa State last week, up late, 17-6 on their home field, let it slip away, they're still in position to compete to get to Arlington as well, but they didn't. So what is TCU playing for after a tough loss on their home field, having to come on the road? TCU's in a very difficult, precarious position against a BYU team that is absolutely locked in and desperate to win this game.
Yeah, and when we're talking about just what to play for, BYU has everything. There's not a single goal that BYU had at the beginning of the season that's not in reach, unless they said we need to be undefeated. But I'm not sure any team's that arrogant, right? But their idea was win a conference championship, get to the Big 12 championship game, win the Big 12 championship game, be in a college football playoff. Everything that was on that tote board is still on the tote board. So BYU has everything to play for. TCU, the other thing, every team always says we want to get to a bowl game. That's like the lowest of goals. Well, they're already there. They have 6 wins, right? But now they're kind of out of the race to get to Arlington. They're not going to be in a college football playoff. They're kind of out of a race for a league championship. And the way they lost the game last week were
super deflating.
They were way ahead. They turned the ball over. They were driving down to win the game. They turned it over again. They're coming in possibly without their best running back. It's BYU on the mentality side. If they don't have an edge, then something is wrong with BYU.
So several of the BYU fans interacted with me about the Rootables last week, said, oh, man, I want TCU to win this game so that maybe they're ranked coming in. It's a better win for BYU. I said, I don't want that at all. I want no wind in the sails for TCU. And losing the game the way that they did, it's going to be hard to generate that wind in Provo.
Yes.
Advantage BYU mentality that way. Okay, our question of the day, on a scale of 1 to 10, how confident are you that BYU will bounce back and beat a talented TCU squad? At CL_living, oft contributor on this program, says at home, at night. With every final goal still reachable, staying humble and hungry, the confidence scale is at precisely 8.474747. The 47, obviously, for Bear Bachmeier.
Right. It's 47 repeating.
So I love it. I love that. Weigh in on X, Facebook, and Instagram.
Yeah, that is awesome.
National